Wagwan everybody! In today's episode, we're going to be talking about the reasons for which Salvatore Leone made Toni Cipriani build his reputation up from scratch at the beginning of GTA Liberty City stories, despite the fact that he deserved a lot more. Why? Let's quickly recall the whole thread. Toni Cipriani, the protagonist of GTA Liberty City stories, a long time before the beginning of LCS's story, has been asked by his boss Salvatore Leone to murder a highly ranked member of a rival mafia family. Toni, in order to escape consequences for what he's done, was forced to skip town for a long time. The story of LCS begins in the moment when Toni comes back to Liberty City. He expects everyone, and especially his boss Salvatore, to give him a lot of credit and appreciation for what he's done and the fact that he left his family and friends for a long time, and all that to gain respect in the mafia. He expected a generous reward from his boss. However, the way he was treated came a very long way from what his expectations were. It turned out that Sal has found himself a new favorite, Vincenzo Chili, who became a capo while Toni was away. But the worst thing is that Toni did not receive absolutely anything for his big favor from the past. He was given a small flat and he had to be Vincenzo's errand boy. Additionally, Vincenzo did not have any respect for Toni whatsoever. He patronized him, was offending him and treating him like a nobody.
Brain cell? Geez, Toni, Sal said you was dumb muscle, but I didn't think anyone was that dumb.
And he was making Toni do his dirty work, which was literally the worst sort of dirty work that you could think of in an organization like the Mafia. Over time, Toni managed to get his boss' respect back relatively quickly, which eventually resulted in him becoming a made man himself. But did he really have to earn his respect back? Shouldn't he have been welcomed like a hero and given a reward straight away? Was Sal's decision right to demote him and treat him like that? Let's find out what were the motives behind Salvatore's decision. The first argument that I'm gonna give is that despite that Toni was away from the city for a long time so people will forget about him, Sal still knew that if Toni came back and suddenly started doing big moves, people would quickly remember who he was, and then the whole lying low period would go down the drain. A similar situation occurs in GTA Vice City. Tommy gets out of jail after 15 years. He got locked up because he was set up by his boss, Sonny Forelli, that was scared that Tommy would want to take over his spot at the throne of the Forelli Mafia family, because Tommy had huge potential, was very intelligent and ambitious. By the time Tommy got out of jail, he was not aware that it was because of Sonny that he got locked up in the first place. Tommy expected to just go back to putting in work for the Mafia and building his reputation back up. However, Sonny had a different plan. See, even though a lot of people forgot about Tommy during the 15 years of his absence, Sonny was aware that even after this time, if he suddenly came back and started putting in work as he was 15 years ago, people would quickly remember who he was, and very quickly, he would yet again become a serious competitor for Sonny's position. That's why Sonny decided to send him to Vice City in order to expand the business. This way, he was working to the Mafia's benefit, and at the same time, the people that potentially could start supporting the idea of him being a leader did not even know that he was back. In Toni's case, Sal didn't want people to remember about Toni. Notice how Toni's been made a capo after they kicked out the Sindacos from Portland. Maybe the person that Toni killed was a capo of the Sindacos operating in Portland. So Sal wanted to first get rid of them so he can make Toni a capo only after he made sure that the people who were after Toni were taken out of the picture. The second reason that I thought of is that the criminal underworld in Liberty City has changed since Toni left. What I mean is that Toni was out of the loop for some time, and therefore he did not know what changed, how the gang territories changed, what gangs entered the game, what products entered the market, as well as which people went away, who joined up, who got promoted, who got demoted, how the strategies changed, etc, etc. If Sal had made Toni a capo straight away, gave him some territory, some businesses to run, there was a risk that Toni would make bad decisions simply because he didn't know how the market evolved during the time of his absence. So Sal first wanted Toni to get to know how things are at the moment, and what better way to get to know the criminal underworld if not by becoming an errand boy for one of the capos. Such a decision makes a lot of sense, and Sal could definitely use it as an argument to defend his position in this case. However, Toni was not good material for a capo really. In GTA LCS, he played the role of a dumb muscle that was only running errand after errand for Salvatore, even after he was made. We can see that in GTA 3 his position in the Mafia improved, as he was an enforcer and he was running a protection racket, so in the end he did become a proper capo. However, maybe Sal had different plans concerning Toni during the story of GTA LCS. Toni was not a very smart guy. He was a typical dirty work kind of guy. He was good in the field, in action, but he did have ambition to become someone more than just Sal's errand boy, although he did not look like someone who would handle the role of a capo. Salvatore knew that Toni probably deserved a reward and a highly ranked position in the organization after his contribution from the past. I would even venture a guess that that $1 million that Sal was talking about at the end of the game was promised to Toni for killing that rival capo.
So I got you that $500,000 I promised.
Half? Ooh, I thought you, said a couple.
I said $1 million.
Sal didn't want to promote and pay Toni straight away though. He knew that Toni would not be much use for him as a capo, as then he would obviously not be doing his dirty work. Additionally, there was a risk that Toni, if he suddenly started earning a lot of money, would rest on his laurels. He would feel overconfident and could potentially start neglecting his duties. You know, people can get complacent once they start making real money, and that was exactly what Salvatore didn't want to happen. He wanted to reward Toni, of course, but first, he wanted to use Toni's infield skills to weaken other mafia families in the city, and then, once they are victorious, then the time to reward Toni would come. And it did, as a matter of fact, as we can tell by watching the final cutscene of the game, as well as by looking at Toni's position in GTA 3. Plus, Sal wanted to show Toni that earning the position of a capo is not just about one big favor. That in order to earn his spot, he has to consistently put in work. It's not that after killing one guy, it's job done. Toni felt like a hero after he came back, and Salvatore wanted to humble him, for similar reasons that those that I listed a while ago. So basically, it was done in order for Toni to not get too complacent. But Sal's plan was even smarter, because he put yet another piece into this equation: Vincenzo. Vincenzo's presence was meant to additionally motivate Toni, to create rivalry between the two, so both of them are gonna try harder than usual just to prove to Salvatore who deserves to be Sal's favorite more. Because Toni was irritated that he done a very big thing for Sal and he sacrificed a long time for him, and now he comes back and it turns out that someone else took his place and now someone else is the number one and he is back at the starting point. Meanwhile, Vincenzo was irritated that he's been working hard for his reputation for a long time, and now some guy comes to the city and straight away gets a job and a flat, and Salvatore is all grateful in that. So Sal's treatment of Toni for Toni was totally unfair, and he felt that he was being massively underappreciated, while from Vincenzo's perspective it actually was the other way around. That Toni comes to the city and has an unfair advantage over him, gets a flat and a job straight away while he had to be working hard for it. This way, Salvatore had both of them working even harder to prove who's better. You must admit that it was a pretty smart move, or it would be if not for the fact that at some point Vincenzo decided that he's got enough and tried to kill Toni. So this decision, as much as it seemed as a cheeky move that would benefit the family, it ended in the death of one of the rivals, which obviously did not benefit anyone in any way. Another possibility was that there was simply no space for another capo in the Leone Mafia. Vincenzo was doing his job very well, and there were also other capos that were also performing very well, and there was no need or room for another one. Obviously, no matter how big Toni's past contributions would be, it would be totally unfair to suddenly demote Vincenzo and give the spot to someone who just barely arrived in the city. So Sal's decision was not only to challenge both Vincenzo's and Toni's ambitions so they work harder, but also to just simply see who actually is better. If Toni could not reach Vincenzo's level, there would be no need for a change. But if Toni would turn out to be more effective than Chili, then Sal would have a reason to take the spot from Vincenzo and give it to Toni. Or it could not even be Vincenzo, but some other capo that would lose the spot. In any case, Sal just wanted to see what Toni's about and how big is his potential really. And lastly, there is a possibility that Sal wanted to test Tony's loyalty by this. He wanted a man through and through that would always follow him wherever, do whatever he asks without questioning his decisions, and someone who would sometimes even allow a spit in their face. And if Tony's loyalty weren't as big as it was in the game, after he came back and found out that Sal isn't going to reward him, he would just say, "Screw you then, I'm going to work for someone else then, I ain't taking that." However, Toni pretty easily accepted Sal's decision and even apologized to him for questioning his leadership. This way, he proved to Sal that he is extremely loyal, will allow for a lot and stick by his leader regardless of the circumstances. This loyalty test makes sense, since we know that Sal was paranoid after CJ done him bad back in 1992. We can even see that Sal's trust to Toni was not that solid, as shown in the driving Mr. Leone mission.
I know what you've been saying about me. You think I'm an idiot? Huh? Is that what you think?
Boss, I ain't been saying nothing about you.
What the fuck? I don't know what's happening to me. Jesus, I'm getting paranoid, Tony. Really fucking paranoid.
Actually, all of the other arguments were also checking Tony's loyalty. This treatment from Sal was a spit in the face, and yet Toni accepted it and still stuck by his leader, working his reputation back up with barely any complaining. So to summarize, even though Sal's decision to demote Toni and to not give him the credit for his contribution that he probably deserved seems wrong and unfair, in reality, it has a lot of logical reasons behind it. The fact that the people will remind themselves of Toni and he'll be in danger again, the fact that the underworld changed and Toni was out of the loop for a long time, Sal's fear that Toni would get complacent, challenging the ambition of either Toni and Vincenzo, as well as a test for Toni's loyalty. So Sal's decision was unfair, but it was also reasonable, and in the end, Toni got his reward anyway. He just had to wait and work for it a little more. Remember to like the video if you enjoyed it, and also don't forget to let me know if you agree with my arguments and what would you add to this list. Thank you for watching, respect.